Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from group Experimental Research. Now we would like to presenting the material about experimental research, and the first material will be explained by me, Devie Novitrie, and my student's number is 192122004 as the first presenter. So guys, as you can see in the slide, experimental research is a study that strictly adjusts to scientific research designs. It includes a hypothesis, a variable that can be manipulated by researchers, and variables that can be measured, calculated, and compared. And most importantly, experimental research is completed in a controlled environment. So the researchers collect data and result will either support or reject the hypothesis. And this method of research is referred to as hypothesis testing or a deductive research method. So, experimental research is researchers manipulate at least one independent variables and while controlling other relevant variables and observe the effects on one or more dependent variables. So, we have to know about what is the definition of experimental research. Next, also we have to know about what is the purpose of experimental research. So, experimental research seeks to determine a relationship between two variables, that is between independent variables and dependent variables. And after completing an experimental research study, a correlation between a scientific aspect of an entity and the variables being studied is either supported or rejected. So next is characteristics of experimental research. Is random assignment. Random assignment is the process of assigning individuals a random to group or to different groups in experiments. That is according to Creswell 2008, page 300. And the purpose of random assignment is to ensure that groups receiving different treatments and as a reasonable, equal, or similar in any way that could possibly impact the outcome. That's according to Levin 2007. And a random assignment is very important to know that random assignment and random selection to not refer to the same process, rather random selection to refer to the process of selecting individuals. So just that presentation from me. The next material will be explained by the second presenter. Thank you.
My name is Fitri Rahmatillah. My student's number is 192122026. The first characteristic in experimental research is control of extraneous variables. Extraneous variables is a variables that is not related to the purpose of the study but could affect the results of the experiment. It means when we conduct experiment, there are other variables that can affect the results. Other variables that never cross your mind might influence the outcome of an experiment. This is called extraneous variable. A simple example is you want to know if online learning increases student understanding of math. One group use an online knowledge to study, the other group use a traditional text. You would have to make sure that group A is connected with group B. Extraneous variable could include previous information or knowledge of math or the amount of support in the home, aptitude, students' aptitude, or temperature in the room. Randomization is the way to achieve the necessary control. Second is manipulation of treatment. Experimental research needs at least one independent variable must be manipulated. Manipulation happens when the researchers change the value of a variable on purpose in order to assess its effect on another variables. That's all for me, and the next material will be presented by my friends.
Hello, my name is Shelvi Susanto, NPM 192122006, and as the next presenter, I will explain the next material about observation and measurement. The independent and dependent variables are two variables of main interest in an experimental research. The researcher manipulated the independent variable, while the variables that are observed on which the effects of the changes but not manipulated by the experimenter is called dependent variables. The effect of the manipulation of the independent variable on the dependent variable is observed. To examine the effect of different teaching methods on achievement in reading, a researcher would manipulate method or the independent variable by using different teaching methods in order to assess their effect on reading achievement, which is the dependent variable. Some changes can be observed directly, whereas other changes are measured indirectly. Learning, for example, is often the dependent variable in educational research. Researchers cannot measure learning directly. They can only estimate learning through scores on an achievement test or other measures chosen according to the operational definition. Therefore, strictly speaking, the dependent variable is observed scores rather than the learning per SE.
The next material is about validity of experimental. Validity is not a property of an experimental design, but rather refers to the validity of the inferences. Campbell and Stanley in 1963 defined two general categories of validity of research designs. They are internal validity and external validity. The first one, internal validity. Campbell and Stanley 1963 stated that internal validity is the basic requirement if one is to draw correct conclusions from an experiment. Internal validity refers to the inferences about whether the changes observed in a dependent variable are in fact caused by the independent variables in a particular research study rather than by some extraneous factors. Internal validity is essentially a problem of control. Internal validity is the recognition that when it is associated with experimental research, it refers both to how well the study was run and how confidently one can conclude that the change in the dependent variable was produced solely by the independent variable and not extraneous ones. And the second is external validity. External validity is the extent to which a study's result can be generalized or applied to other people or settings reflects. It is the extent to which you can generalize the findings of a study to other situations, people, settings, and measures. There are two main types of external validity: population validity and ecological validity. Population validity refers to whether you can reasonably generalize the findings from your sample to a larger group of people or the population, and ecological validity refers to whether you can reasonably generalize the findings of a study to other situations and settings in the real world. That's all from me. The next material will be presented by the other presenter. Thank you.
Alright, hello everyone, my name is Yuni Rostiani. My student's number is 1921220009. So, here are the traits to internal validity. The first is history. There are events or conditions that occur between the beginning of treatment of and post-test that can result in changes in dependent variables. The second one is maturation. The term maturation refers to changes, biological or psychological, that might occur in subjects simply as a result of time passing. The third is testing. The results of a post-test are influenced by the results of a pre-test or an intervening evaluation. The fourth is instrument. A modification in the instruments employed during the investigation has resulted in an instrumentation trait to internal validity. Okay, the next is statistical regression. When a subgroup is selected from a larger group based on the subgroup's esteem scores, or high or low on a measure, statistical regression poses a danger to internal validity. The sixth is selection. When there are significant disparities between the experimental and control groups even before the experiment begins, selection is a concern. The seventh is experimental mortality or attrition. When there is a differential loss of volunteers from the comparison groups, the experiment is threatened by death or attrition. And the last is selection maturation interaction. Treatment groups are formed based on the maturation refers of the subjects. Alright, I think that's all from me. The next material will be delivered by the next presenter. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sherin Bunga Permata, NPM 192122028, and here I will explain about threats to construct validity. The threats to construct validity concern how well the study's operations match to the constructs used to describe those operations. So there are four potential threats. The first is a measure of construct. In this case, the measures used were not appropriate or poor operational definitions, so the construct was not accurately measured. The second is manipulation of the construct. In this case, the construct was not properly manipulated in the study, or faulty manipulation may lead to incorrect inference. The third is reactivity to the experimental situation. In this case, subject perceptions of the experimental situation become part of the treatment construct actually being tested. Recall the Hawthorne effect from the discussion of internal validity. The last is experimenter effect. In this case, the experimenter can convey expectations about the desirable responses, and those expectations become part of the treatment construct being studied. Okay, next is experimental research design. In experimental research design, the design one chooses to use is very important to the validity of any conclusions that might be drawn from the research. The research classified design as pre-experimental, randomized experimental, and quasi-experimental, depending on the degree of control provided. The first is pre-experimental. The pre-experimental designs provide little or not control of extraneous variable and are not recommended. The second is randomized. In randomized experimental designs are the best for investigating causal relationship among variables because they require random assignment of subject to level of the independent variable. And the last is quasi-experimental. Quasi-experimental designs are used when the investigator cannot randomly assign subject to the treatments. I think that is for me. For the next presenter, please.
Well, next slide will be explained by me. Hello, my name is Galuh Dwigustiar H, and my student's number is 192122018. The material will be explained about advantages of experimental research. The first one is control over variables. This kind of research looks into controlling independent variables so that extraneous and unwanted variables are removed. And two is determination of cause and effect relationship is easy because of its experimental design. This kind of research manipulates variables so that a cause and effect relationship can be easily determined. The last one is provides better results. When performing experimental research, there are specific controls set up as well as strict conditions to adhere to. With these two in place, better research can be achieved. With this kind of research, the experiment can be defeated and the result checked again. Getting better research also gives a research a boost of confidence. Disadvantages of experimental research. Number one is cannot always do experiments. It means several issues such as technical or practical reasons can hinder an experimental from ever getting started. For one, not a very variable that can be manipulated should be. Number two is creates artificial situations. Experimental research also means controlling irrelevant variable or certain occasions. As such, this creates a situation that is somewhat artificial. And the last point is subject to human error. Researchers are human too and they can commit mistakes. However, whether the error was made by machine or man, one thing remains certain: it will impact the result of a study. Thank you.